Imagine a world where Australia was just a continent, filled with a bunch of massive countries, but otherwise pretty small in terms of population and economic standing. In Australian schools, teachers would talk about a time when all the countries were united under one flag, one government, but went on to lament on how it failed. What if I told you this actually happened about 60 years ago, and as of the time of this video's writing, we're just about 9 days shy of the 59th anniversary of its collapse? Oftentimes you'd see people on the internet complaining and whining about how things would be so much easier if the Caribbean was one country, but it actually was. Yeah, for years. That's such a short period of time. I guess they didn't get 4 more years. Context is everything, isn't it? So, let's get a bit of context. During the 20th century, Caribbean nationalists was all up for having a unified English Caribbean state. After the Second War, decolonization was running wild, and there were the first talks to merge the British colonies into one single state. This would be put into action in 1956 with the British Caribbean Act. 2 years later, the Federation would be founded on January 3rd. The capital was chosen to be Port of Spain, Trinidad, and it served as the capital, only it wasn't actually chosen. It was actually supposed to be Chaguaramas on the northwestern peninsula of Trinidad, but they all forgot it was owned by America. Anyway, Port of Spain housed the federal capital. Grantley H. Adams became the prime minister. By '61, Jamaica pulled a Brexit and left before it was cool. So, let's start with the original units. Jamaica, which at the time of the original federation also included the Turks and Caicos Islands, as well as the Cayman Islands. But for this video, since they're currently separate entities within the United Kingdom, they'll be administered as different units. Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Grenada, St. Lucia, St. Kitts and Nevis, Anguilla used to be a part of St. Kitts, but I'll make an exception. Their population is small by even Caribbean standards, and having a small economy, I'll merge the 2 units into one called St. Kitts, Nevis and Anguilla, or SKNA. Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, which was recently victim to volcanic eruption, and Montserrat. I'd like to clump it in somewhere, but meh, I'll just leave them out for now. Now for some new additions. First up, Guyana, the Bahamas, and Belize. A key part of many politicians at the time's campaigns was getting those 3 to join the union. However, Guyana had issues to deal with, and the other 2 was skeptical. And I'm going to add one that's completely random, but some people in Trinidad supported it. Let's add the former Dutch Guyana, or Suriname, into the mix. They're currently a CARICOM nation, and they're more or less democratic. Good, now that we know our countries, let's take a look at some of their stats. The largest countries by GDP are, in the following order, Trinidad, Jamaica, and the Bahamas. Trinidad and Tobago, with $22.718 billion, Jamaica with $14.228, and the Bahamas with $11.56 billion. I can't list all of the individual territories' GDP, but I'll still list them in order below. Guyana, the Cayman Islands, starting out edging ahead of Barbados, although the data is a bit misleading as it's slightly older. Barbados, Suriname, Turks and Caicos Islands, St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla, St. Lucia, Belize, Antigua and Barbuda, Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and the poorest, in terms of raw GDP figures, is Dominica. The total GDP of this country would be approximately $76.887 billion, with more than half the country's wealth coming from the top 3 members. On the world stage, the new federation would be just behind the Dominican Republic. Now, let's look at the population. Jamaica is by far the most populous, with 2,961,167 people. Trinidad is nearly half of that with 1,399,488, and Guyana at 786,552. Nextly, we have Suriname, Belize, Bahamas, Barbados, St. Lucia, Grenada, St. Vincent and Grenadines, Antigua and Barbuda, Dominica, St. Kitts, Nevis, Anguilla, Cayman Islands and Turks and Caicos being the smallest. The total population would be 7,561,732, which would mean the country has a GDP per capita of $10,167, which would actually make it pretty well off on the world stage. Going back to the population for a second, interestingly, when the old federation existed it only had a population of 3.2 million, even if we take into account Guyana, Suriname, the Bahamas and Belize, the country still managed to double their total population. Nextly, physically, Guyana would be by far the largest at over 215,000 square kilometers, Suriname at a little over 163,000 and then Belize, pretty far behind actually, at a little under 23,000 square kilometers. To put that into perspective, the old Union was 20,239 square kilometers, which would mean Guyana is literally 10 times the size of the old Federation. The total size would be a pretty large 435,925 square kilometers, which to compare, the new Federation would be a bit larger than the US state of California, or about 15,000 square kilometers smaller than Sweden in Europe. Looking at the people, a vast majority would be of African descent, with a large community of Indians, mostly concentrated in the Guyanas and Trinidad. Don't be fooled though, the Indian population is just under 1 million people, or almost 1 in every 7 people in the country, which is nothing to scoff at. Amerindians would also be a significant people group, especially in the mainland territories. There'd also be small communities of Arabs, Europeans, Chinese, and other peoples. As for religion, remember, all of the territories were colonized by northern Germanic powers, and they left an impact culturally on the countries, which means Protestantism is pretty prevalent in the region, with Roman Catholics also accounting for significant portions of the population, with Trinidad, Grenada, and other territories being colonies of the Spanish and French before they became British colonies. Thanks to Trinidad, Guyana, and Suriname, Islam would be pretty popular in the new country. There would also be minority Jews, Hindus and other groups, as well as a significant atheist population in addition to folk religions. English would be the most spoken, aside from Suriname where Dutch, a local variant of Hindustani and Amerindian languages are spoken, and in Belize, English, Spanish, German and Mayan languages are spoken. Some major industries in the Federation would be tourism, however Trinidad, Guyana and Jamaica would be significant industrial powers within the country. Agriculture in the mainland territories, as well as Trinidad, Jamaica, and some of the smaller states would also be important, as well as resources throughout the country. Guyana has gold, Jamaican bauxite and Trinidadian oil and tar. Financial services would also be key, and in fact possibly something the new nation would be famous for, as they'd have Cayman Islands in their dominion. Not to mention that big-ass exclusive economic zone. I mean for lemon's sake, it stretches from southern Mexico to Brazil across a with equal to New York to California. All in all, the region would be pretty well off, despite their small size. Well, obviously the old Federation failed, and a key reason it failed was representation, so how would I as a West Indian with hindsight do it today? Well, I know lots of people may find it convoluted, and I'm sure that the boys and girls in CARICOM would probably shrug this aside, but this is how I do it. Firstly, it's important to give a quick overview of the old system. The House of Representatives had 45 total seats. Jamaica got 17, Trinidad and Tobago, 10, Barbados 5, and all the other states aside from Montserrat 2. They ended up with only 1. The Senate was composed of 19 members, who was appointed by the Governor-General, on the advice of the Prime Minister. As with the typical UK-style government, there'd be 2 houses, the lower house, composed of popularly elected representatives from geographical constituencies, and an upper house composed of a proportionally elected Senate. Explanation. The lower house. Pretty much, we'd have MPs, just like in the UK, Canada, Australia, or most of the current Caribbean countries. Each state will be awarded seats based on their population. If the total population of the state is under 400,000, they're granted a seat for every 40,000. Over 400,000, and it bumps to 50,000. Under this system, Suriname would be granted 11 seats, while Barbados would be given 9. Trinidad 24, and Cayman Islands 1. In this system things would be more balanced, with the larger states, Trinidad, Jamaica and Guyana not absolutely overwhelming the smaller states. The MPs would be elected in a system similarly to Australia's. The upper house. The Senate would be proportionately elected. Every 5% of the vote a party managed to win, they'd win 1 seat. So if Party A wins 65 out of 100 votes, they'd win 13 seats. In this system, no state would be overpowered, and they'd all have to work together. In order to pass any laws in the Senate, the party would need 171 votes at least. The head would be a prime minister, and as standard in the UK system, the MPs would have to pick their prime minister. Where my proposed state would differ, however, is having the PM as the head of state and the head of government instead of having a president as in Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica, Suriname and Guyana, or a governor-general/queen in all the other states. I mean, in Trinidad the president is more or less a puppet of the prime minister, so just cut them out of the picture and give the PM their powers. Well, this is not the best, but it's certainly better than the crap, one-sided system they had in 1958, and it should be a better deal for everyone. Who knows? Maybe in future they'd adopt a system vaguely based on the above. Well, this new federation would face a few issues, notably the stark difference between the Anglophone states and the Dutch Suriname. There'd also be a conflict of interest in terms of some countries having the British monarchy at the head of their state. I think these issues could be worked out, and hey, this is only for fun, isn't it? Well, here we are, at the end of the video. I hope you all learned something, and enjoyed it. I wanted to make this for a while, but hey, we finally got the host to act out the script. You wouldn't believe how much the narrator cuts down the production time. And here I am, speaking in the third person. Thanks a lot for tuning in guys, tell me as usual what can be improved.